Juan Mendez Scott's The Guest Room. Chapter 8. I would catch them in the act. I heard voices and woke up from a deep sleep. It was late in the evening, but since the sun had set, I couldn't tell if it was late at night or early in the morning. My head was pounding, and I could hear the blood gushing fast to my brain. It felt like a hangover. I looked up and saw the empty bottle of red wine and wineglass sitting on my night table. That confirmed to me that I was suffering from a hangover. Then it hit me why I drank the whole bottle of wine. That sick feeling returned to my stomach. Mrs. Taylor heard my husband and best friend making love. They must have been going hard. Hard enough for our neighbor to hear them. I was asleep on my stomach. Then I noticed that I still had my work clothes on. There was a dry, sour taste in my mouth from drinking all that wine. I rolled over onto my back. I looked over at the TV. There was some cop show on Channel 4 that I didn't recognize. I needed to get out of that red dress. I was sweating a little because it was hot and muggy. But a slight breeze did ease through the window, and it felt good. I was pretty sure that breeze came from the rain. And it was raining hard too. I was getting sick and tired of all the rain, but it relaxed me. Just a little bit though. I tried to close my eyes to relax. But the image of Preston and Liana making love behind my back had me fidgeting. Then I heard voices again. Then laughter followed. I sat up, trying to figure out who was in my house laughing and talking. I tried to get myself together. I needed to go and see who was laughing and talking in my house. When I walked into the kitchen, they were sitting at the kitchen table, facing each other. Preston was sipping on a Heineken. Liana was sipping on a glass of wine. Their conversation was quiet and discreet, between the two of them only. I knew that because they were almost whispering, that's how low they were talking. Liana was still in her work clothes. Preston was still in his uniform. When they finally felt my presence, they turned their heads to look at me. You could hear an ant walking across the floor, it was so quiet. Liana moved her bare legs out from under the table and crossed them. They tried their best to smile when they saw me, but they still looked guilty as sin. I could actually see the guilt and fear in their eyes. It was so uncomfortable, it was unbearable. It was like I caught them in bed. Caught them doing it to each other. I wanted to grab my butcher knife from the kitchen drawer and slice both their asses up like a pizza. So what were y'all in here whispering about? I asked them. They looked at each other and tried to smile the guilt away. But the guilt was glued to their faces. Preston gave me a rare sexy smile. I guess that's how Liana made him feel. Sexy. He said, "Damn, baby, you look like you just woke up and climbed out of a coffin." They busted out laughing at me. They were laughing like they had been laughing at me before I woke up and came downstairs. Oh, I get it. They've been liking each other and doing each other, I guessed it put them in a great mood. Especially Preston. Bastard. He was hardly ever on joke time. Hardly ever laughed, period. Now here he was, so happy and in a good mood, he wants to laugh now. On joke time, cutting on me. Which made me look worse because Liana's backstabbing ass laughed at me too. And I didn't find it funny. And I hated them at that moment. I hated them enough to murder them. What broke my heart was the looks they kept giving each other. That we can't talk right now look. But we'll talk later. And if possible, when Doris is asleep, we'll talk and make love later. She looks like she just woke up, Liana said. Yeah, she did, Preston said, with this stupid, teasing grin on his face. She was asleep when I got home. With the bottle of wine lying right next to her. Like it was her favorite stuffed animal or something. They laughed at me again. Preston was in a serious joking mood. Which was also rare for him. It was as if he was showing off. He was feeling good. Like most people feel after they've made love. My girl was tired and beat when she got home, Liana said, staring over at me, smiling. She was feeling good too. How's the car running? Preston asked. I made things more uncomfortable, sitting down at the table with them. All it was a blown fuse. More or less a minor electrical problem. It was so uncomfortable they just stared in my face. They could tell I didn't have much to say to them. They knew something was bothering me. Preston was serious now. Well, I'm glad it wasn't nothing big. I know you're glad you got your car back. I nodded, staring down at the kitchen table in a deep daze. Preston finished his beer, getting up from the table. I glanced up at him and noticed something. He had an erection. An erection so big it could have ripped a large hole in his work pants for some air. Real quick, he pulled his shirt tail down over his belt buckle. But that erection was impossible to hide. What the hell kind of conversation were they having? And what the hell was going on under the table? To keep the attention away from his massive hard-on, Preston said, "What are you cooking tonight?" I don't know yet, I said, not taking my eyes off the massive hard-on. Might have to order something. I don't feel like cooking. Both Liana and I watched Preston grab 2 beers from the fridge. I flipped a look over at her. I could see the love in her eyes as they followed Preston into the 3rd bedroom he anointed his man cave. Just looking at Liana's sneaky pretty face, I made up my mind right then and there. I made up my mind that I was going to murder my husband and my best friend. If it was true. And according to what Mrs. Taylor described to me, it was true that she heard them making love in the guest bedroom. I would have approached them about it, but all they would do is lie and say Mrs. Taylor was old and senile. So I decided before I murdered them, I was going to have to catch them in the act. I think you had a little too much wine, Preston said, going into his man cave. Liana got up to pour herself another glass of wine. I caught her still watching Preston as he disappeared into his man cave. I was jealous. I was insanely jealous. Murderously jealous. My husband Preston made love hard. And well. And him giving that pleasure to another woman was making me even more insanely and murderously jealous. Best friend or not. But to catch them making love and then murder them, I was going to have to play it cool. That meant staying patient until I was able to catch them in the act. Liana caught me staring at her and said, "You okay?" I shrugged. Maybe I have had a little too much wine to drink. I feel so out of it. Liana sat back down, facing me. I'll be feeling that way real soon. I gawked at Liana a moment, freezing her. Liana, have you been taking off some days to deal with this mess with Phil? I caught her off guard. I didn't want to seem too obvious yet though. I wanted to catch them before they got suspicious of me and tried to meet up somewhere else. Like a motel or something. No. I wanted to catch them in my home. In one of my beds. So that when I murdered them I could plead insanity. I mean, if you have, I understand, I said. Like I was saying. You know. It might not be a bad idea to call the police. Well, Liana said. As a matter of fact. I did go to my supervisor about it. Just in case Phil shows up at your job. Right. And he said if it will help any he would let me telework from home. I knew then Mrs. Taylor was right about Liana being there some days during work hours. I was so much in denial. I felt like grabbing a steak knife from the drawer and doing some work on Liana like a surgeon. Oh, okay, I said, struggling to stay cool. I prayed hard to keep my hands from around Liana's throat. That's good. It won't be a problem with me teleworking from here, will it? I shook my head, narrowing my eyes into hers. No, of course I don't mind. You're home now, Liana. I meant to tell you, it's just been so much on my mind. Girl, I know. I know. I'm sorry, Doris, I meant to tell you. No, Mrs. Taylor told me when I got home that she noticed a car parked in front of the house a couple of days last week. Liana looked at me, suspicious. What, she's been asking about my car? Asking about me? Well, I mean, you know how that is. She's old and nosy, bless her heart. Anything out of the ordinary, she's going to say something. Oh. Okay. I mean, I hope it's not a problem being here. No, it's not like I don't trust you in my house by yourself or anything, I said, and I had a sarcastic grin on my face when I said it. No, it's nothing like that at all. Okay. You're home, Liana, I said. And I know I had murder in my eyes. You're home. And I want you to feel at home. We exchanged smiles. Then there was a sparkle of joy in Liana's eyes. I appreciate that, Doris, because I love it here. I really, really love it here. I love the neighborhood. Although it's falling apart. We laughed out loud. My laugh was fake though. I love the ambience here, Liana said. Surrounded by woods. Near the water. I nodded. Well, that's good. Liana sat there a moment, watching me. She could see it on my face that there was a problem. I was trying my best not to wear my emotions on my sleeve. Doris. Everything okay? Yeah, I said, waving it off. Just tired and groggy right now. For some reason, Liana looked at me as if she felt sorry for me. You just seem like something's bothering you. I shook my head. I'm fine. You look like you've been crying, Liana said, studying my eyes. No, just waking up. That's all it is. I've been checking online for apartments in Waldorf. So you've decided on Waldorf? Yeah, I think I'm going to check Waldorf out. Although, I'm going to hate the commute back and forth to work every day. But I plan to telework from now on anyway. The commute is going to be a little crazy, yeah. Liana thought to herself a moment. But at the same time I have to realize something. What's that? That I have to protect myself. At all cost. I just stared at Liana. A cold stare. Yes you do, Liana. Liana stared back. Probably wondering why I was staring at her. And there was a twinge of tension between us. You seem tense, Liana said, getting up from the table. Let me pour you some wine. Relax you. Well, wake you up a little. Liana grabbed a wineglass from the cabinet. Sure, I would love a glass of wine right now, I said. Liana poured me a glass. And while she was pouring it, I noticed her hand shaking. What was she nervous about, I wondered. I just have this feeling that he's close by, Liana said, her voice cracking. Liana did the smart thing by changing the subject to something else. Besides sitting there in my face, wondering what was wrong with me. I didn't want her getting too close. She might have figured out that I knew about the affair. I said, that he's close by? Liana said, nodding. Close by how? As in near my house? Liana looked at me a second and brought the glass of wine over to me. Maybe, she said, sitting down. You think Phil is going to end up remembering where we live? Keeping it to myself, I was starting to hope Phil remembered where we lived. He could catch Liana and Preston together and kill them both for me. Later, I felt bad for thinking that though. But how bad could it have been when I was planning on murdering them myself? Liana gave it some thought as she sipped on wine. I think he's going to find me. I know he is. Eventually. Liana, it's got to be horrible living your life like this. Wondering if Phil is going to step out from every corner you walk up to. Liana looked at me, dead serious. I'm not going to spend the rest of my life running from him. If I have to defend myself, I will. You may just have to. And I'll do whatever I have to do. Even if I have to kill him. Before he finds you and kills you first. And I'm not going to let that happen. We both sipped our wine in silence, the tension between us palpable. The rain continued to pour outside, the steady drumming on the roof a stark contrast to the turmoil in my mind. I watched Liana closely, every movement, every expression, searching for any sign of betrayal. My resolve hardened. I would catch them in the act. And when I did, there would be no mercy.